All right, welcome to our class. Thank you very much for being accommodating it and taking in this video. I don't know if I'll be here or not to actually give this demonstration to you, but this will be a good run through of the material before we actually present it in class. If not, I'll have this video for you regardless. So thank you very much for attending. Let's get on with the IK-FK switching. So far, FK has been pretty straightforward and easy to implement. Y'all did real good on your homeworks. IK is a little bit more complicated, a little bit more things to handle, but not totally bad. But things start getting a little bit carried away with IK-FK switching. In fact, this is the reason why I got into procedural rigging, is because I couldn't do IK-FK switching by hand, regardless anyway. And so let's get going on. I want to try to clean up the environment a little bit. The character is starting to get kind of complicated. The simple FK character is pretty easy. We've got the skin, we've got the skeleton, we've got the FK rig, and when we start dropping in all of the IK constructs, is things are getting a little bit more complicated, and so we need to create an infrastructure to store our character parts and pieces so that they all kind of fall into place and are easy to organize. Now, disclaimer again, you might have your own way of organizing your character, and I'm sure it's very good. My way is not the end all of ways, and I was just showing you a demonstration of a way that could be done. If you have a better way of doing it and you're more comfortable using it, then by all means use that technique as your own. Oh my, listen, look, let me get rid of that. Okay, yep. All right. Very good. Now, the way I organize my thing is that we have our character, and the character is broken up into three objects. We've got the rig, the skin, and the accessories. Inside of the rig, we have the skeleton and the controls. So really, that's not too remarkable, but we do have the skin component and the accessories component built on the insides of that. And so what we're going to do is we're going to parent the elbow controller to the root control. Okay, so what we mean by the elbow controller, that's the pull vector control. We're gonna put that into the root control. Then we're gonna lock and hide and its scale and its display. Then we're going to parent the IK group also to the root control. We're going to lock and hide and scale those away. And then finally, we're going to parent the IK handle to some other convenient place. And that's most probably where the accessories will go. All right, here is example of some code that I have provided. So if we were going to make the character, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a group called the rig. Then we're going to create a group called the accessories. And then we're going to create a group for the skin. And I'm also going to create an entire group called the infrastructure. And that's what they're all going to be put together. We're going to parent the self rig, the self accessories, the self skin group, all into the self infrastructure, and then we're going to return the self infrastructure. And so let me see if I can find that inside of here. Make character. Aha. Okay, so there we go. There's the make character. And so if we look at the if we look at the main constructor for our character, for our class, we now see that it's basically, we have our constructor. We're going to create our character name given the input name. Its mesh is an input mesh, and then our character is going to be self.makeCharacter. So what we're going to do is take a look at what that looks into this program. So here is the exact same script. We're going to initialize our character in a constructor. We're going to assign its name. We're going to assign its skin mesh, and then we're going to call make character, or the make character, and that's going to build all of the controllers. And so the make infrastructure is what we want here. The make character is what we were looking at before. So what I'm going to do is I am just going to, before we do anything, I am going to just comment out this section here. all the way through. And then I'm going to execute this just so we see what the character infrastructure does. The character infrastructure is exactly what we were looking at before. We're going to create the self rig. We're going to create the self accessories, the self skin group, the self infrastructure, and then we're going to parent them all to the self infrastructure. So let's just execute this and see how it goes. Okay, so nothing really happened here except a character named Stosh was brought up on here. And then we execute it. And there's three groups here: the rig, the accessories, and the skin. And so we've got those three. And so we are now ready to kind of like rock and roll and continue organizing our character. All right, so now we're going to start creating the character, and we're going to try to start going into the area that I had just uncommented there. And so I'm going to go back into the character, and we're going to go up here. And so I'm going to get rid of this, and I'm going to get rid of this. And so this make character should look pretty familiar. I'm going to put this on here, and I'm going to comment out this last line, which says self make IKFK switch. And so what other might have been difficult, I'm going to take my skin mesh, and then I'm going to parent it to the skin group. And otherwise, I'm going to take my markers. I'm going to create my default markers. Then I'm going to create this character locators. We're going to build the skeleton, and then we're going to build the FK controllers here. And then once we get done, we're going to put the character skeleton into the self rig and put the FK controllers also into the self rig. And then, yeah, let's create something along here that we left off last week of where we make the IK controllers. So I'm going to select all this. And then there we have Zangief going along with the IKFK. And I'm going to hide good old Zangief here. And so here we have the controller templates. We're going to leave those as is for now because we don't really want them. And so here we have Stosh with our rig, and there's the accessories and the skin, and you see that the skin is in the skin accessory folder, but we still haven't done anything with the ARM IK yet. Well, the reason why we haven't done anything yet is because what I'm going to show you how today is how to create the IKFK switch. And when we create the IKFK switch, things are going to get a little bit different. And so that is where we're going to leave things off today. And as far as this is concerned, and then we're going to focus on how do we make the IKFK switch. So I'm going to undo all of this in my Zangief. And then I'm going to comment out the IK control. And then we have the IK FK switch. And so let's go ahead and make that. All right, now let's go back to the slides here for a moment. Okay, in order to create the IK FK armature, you got to do three things. Now, this is where things start to get a little bit dicey, and this is the reason why I leave this up to the scripts and I don't do it by hand. You got to create you got to create the FK armature. You got to create the whole thing for the forward kinematics. And then you got to create the whole thing again using the IK armature. Okay, so you're going to have the FK, you're going to have three skeletons. A skeleton, these skeletons should exactly be the same, and they need to be exactly the same, and they need to be exactly the same, probably at least to the 1,000th of a precision. So you have your FK skeleton, your IK skeleton, and then you have your binding skeleton. And the binding skeleton is what the skin gets bound to. And so first what we're going to do is on the FK skeleton, we're going to create the FK armature. We're going to put the FK controllers on it. And right after that, then we're going to take the IK skeleton and then we're going to put the IK controllers right on top of it. You mean we're putting those right on top of the FK armature while it's still there? Yes, we are. But don't worry about that because the FK armature only manipulates the FK skeleton the IK armature only manipulates the IK skeleton. And then once we have the third, the binding skeleton, what we're going to do is that for joint, we are going to blend in between the FK armature and the IK armature so that they're always blending between the IK and the FK so that we can choose IK and or FK whenever we want. All right, so let's get moving along here. And then so I uncommented the the line on the script, and so that's exactly where we left off on here. So here it is, make IK FK switch. And so let me just test to see if this is going to work. If I let this go here, I hit Control A, we hit Enter. All right. Now we see we have our currently. I'm gonna minimize this. Hopefully I'll be able to refine it again. All right, so we have our IK. You notice that here is the controller, our IK, our FKIK controller. We notice the IK is 0. That means it's IK. So when we rotate these individual controllers, they rotate pretty much as expected. You'll see that the FK skeleton is still there. Ironically, the IK skeleton or the binding skeleton is moving along with the FK skeleton right now. And so that moves. And so here, this moves. All right. Now, suppose I wanted to change this over to IK. So I'm going to come over here to my FKIK controller. I'm going to change my IK value to a value of 1. So now you see it's in IK. And so I'm going to grab my N controller and I'm going to move it around. And I'm going to go ahead and rotate it into position and move it here. So he's waving hello to everybody. Hello, everybody. But you'll notice that this is also moving 2 chains at once. The binding skeleton is following the IK skeleton. Now, how do we know? But here's the FK skeleton. It's in the exact old place. So how do we know that we have all 3 skeletons going on at the exact same time? If we select the FKIK, and I don't know if this will work. I'm going to put 0.5 in here. There it goes. I put 0.5 in there, and there you can see all 3 skeletons. Here is our FK skeleton, here is our IK skeleton, and now here is our binding skeleton. Notice that the hand itself is bound to the binding skeleton, and it's not bound to the FK rig or the IK rig. And so that's something that we're going to have to take under consideration when creating all of this. So without further ado, let's go ahead and see how we're going to create this. We're going to create this in today's lecture. We're going to go through all that was gone through in order to create the FK armature. And then we're going to show how to use those same tools to create the IK armature. Then on Wednesday, what we're going to do is we're going to show how to do the blending between the FK and the IK, and then we're going to show a couple of techniques for IK-FK switching. So I'm going to return this back to default here. All right, there's good old Zangief. Let's hide him, and let's see if we can get our, nope. Okay, Maya, where art thou? Oh, there we go. There's the script editor. Okay, I haven't lost it overall. All right, great. So we're going to look for the make FKIK switch, and I believe that's way down here. Switch control. No. Make FKIK switch. And we're going to comment out these one by one so that we. But notice it's pretty simple. We're going to start with the FK portion of the arm, and so we're going to create the FK chain. Then we're going to create the IK chain, and this is where the IK portion is. Then we are going to blend the 2 skeletons into the binding chain. And then once we have those bound, then we're going to create a very fancy switch controller that's going to control the switching between IK and FK. And so for now, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to comment out everything. 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. All right, so we have everything going. So let's just see if this will work. It may complain because I don't have a command in here. So I'm going to go ahead and hit Alt and hit Enter. Okay, so it worked, and we have nothing in here. Okay, so everything is good to go. So let's go ahead and let's get things moving along. All right. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create the FK chain. Wait a second. Let me go ahead and run this again. Okay, right now what we have here is the binding chain. If we look at our skeleton, we see we have the clavicle left, the upper arm left, the lower arm left, and the hand left. And then we have the hand tucked underneath all that. And so that's all we have for now, but that's all we have. And so this is going to be the skeleton that we're going to bind to. All right, good. So I noticed that we're starting off with our binding skeleton, and we're going to create our duplicates off of that. All right, now I'm going to move my, actually, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to uncomment these, and then I am going to put hashtags in front of all these to make them work. Boom, boom, boom. Almost there. All right, let's just test to see if this works. I always get afraid whenever I do a lot of coding inside of Maya because Maya's editor is just a little bit persnickety, but I'll give it a try. So hit Control A, do is enter. Hey, everything works, and we happen to have the clavicle selected. Okay, that's very good. So, oh, it worked because, look at there, I got here duplicate chain. Okay, so let's actually execute this and see what we got here. Now, I said it says duplicate chain. We've got that on here. So if we click down here, you'll see that here the clavicle left, upper arm, lower arm, and hand are still there. But now under the spine 3 control, we now have a new child right next to the parent constraint for the controller for that. We have FK clavicle L, FK upper arm L, FK lower arm L, and FK hand. Okay, so how did we create that? Okay, I used a function that I created here called duplicate chain. And duplicate chain takes as input the bind chain. Now the bind chain I defined as three controllers here, the clavicle, or four, I'm sorry, the clavicle, the upper arm, the lower arm, and the hand. And so the duplicate chain does nothing but takes that chain, here's that as input, and then it changes the name to give it whatever prefix that we want, and then we're going to return that list. So here we start here. We're going to select nothing, and then we're going to do a loop for every single joint in that chain. What we're going to do is for each joint in that chain, we're going to select it and then add it to the true, and then we're going to duplicate it. And so we're going to select all three or all four of those, one after the other, and then we're going to duplicate the entire chain. So the PO means maintain the position offset. The relative rotations may change this, and the name we're just going to call it foo for now. All right, so it's been duplicated. So let's go ahead and test this just to make sure that this indeed works. All right, so I'm going to put a comment here. comment there, comment there, comment there, boom, 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 and boom. Okay, do I have dupe list? Oh yeah, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to uncomment this because I want to have something to return. But let's see what happens when we do the duplicate chain. All right, I'm going to control this, execute it. Okay, so now we have a duplicate chain, but where is all that? Okay, so dupe equals that, and we know it's called foo. Okay, here it is. It's called foo because it's maintaining the same parenting information, and we call it foo1, foo2, and then foo3. And so that's what this function does. That's what this duplicate chain, this maintains its relative position inside of the chain. So that's why we have this R equals true on here. Okay, once we've duplicated that chain, all we have to do now is change the name. So for every joint in the duplicate list now, I'm going to calculate its new name, which is just the joint name, and then it's going to be its prefix, and then the actual chain count that it's duplicating. So it's going to rename it with the prefix and the name of the joint that was counted, well, that was duplicated. And then we're going to append that to the dupe list overall name, and then we're going to increase the count just to do the count. So let's go ahead and test this again. All right, click on here and here. All right, and so there is our duplicated list. And all it did was duplicate the exact same name that was given to it, the clavicle, the upper arm, the lower arm, and the hand, but we're going to put FK in front of each one of those, and we're going to leave them parented with the same parent, which was spine 3. Okay, so that is how the duplicate chain works. Now the next thing I'm going to do is we're going to make quick FK controls. I'm going to go ahead and uncomment that. Now, if you remember, I created the entire FK chain for the whole character using a recursive function. Okay, so that was pretty cool and fun, but now we're going to have to be a little bit more careful because we really only want the FK chain to be done for the arm or the leg or the appendage or whatever arm thing we're dealing with. So I want to come over here to the make quick FK controls. We're going to send to it the chain that we are just created. So we're going to give it the FK chain, the parent joint, and the parent joint is going to get sent to the spine 3. And then the parent control, when that would be the spine 3 parent control. And so that's what it should be. So the FK chain, the parent joint, and the parent control, which in this case is the spine 3 and the spine 3 control. All right, so we have the parent joint is equal to PJ is the parent joint. And the first, you say, yes, this is the first thing. So we're going to set that equal to true. So for every joint we have in the chain, then what we're going to do is we're going to assign if parent control and first, so it's yes, this is the first. We're going to make an align controller 2. Okay, we're going to use the make align controller, but this is a new version. Oh no, we're going to have to make an adjustment to our align controller to work in this much simpler function. But regardless, once we got the align controller, this returns as a controller, and so we're going to return this as first controller. Then we're going to go into the loop again, and then after it's no longer the first time, so we say the parent joint now equals the current joint, and the first now equals false, so it's no longer the first one. And then we're going to go through this entire loop again, and then we're going to go into this. So we're going to deal with the next joint, and then we're going to make the next joint, or the controller, equal to the make align controller 2, and the joint name, and here's the parent joint. All right, then we're going to kick that off as the new PJ, do it again, and we're going to do it 4 times. So let's just test to see if this works again. All right, we've got the make quick FK controls. All right, hit enter. All right, so take a look at this, gang. We have the FK, the FK clavicle, the FK upper arm, the FK lower arm, and the FK hand. But notice that the parent controls are now manipulating only them. So here's the clavicle, upper arm, the lower arm, and the hand. They do not manipulate the binding skeleton anymore. The binding skeleton is off on its own. And so let's take a look at the new skeleton too. I'm gonna have to go find out where this is. Okay, I'm gonna pause this. Hold a second. Okay, gang, I found out where the make align controllers 2 is found, and it is found at line 204 of the code that I gave you. So here it is, make align controller 2, and we're going to receive the joint name that we're going to be working at, the parent name, the type of object that we want for our controller, and our parent controller. And so this is not really necessarily any different than what we've seen before. So let's take a look at what we're doing here. We're going to do is going to select it, and then we're going to create the controller name. Then we're going to duplicate the controller from our library, and then we are going to parent it. We're going to create our parent to the we're going to controller and we're going to control to the world space. So what this essentially does here is when we do this, this unparents it from everything, because when we duplicate it here of the template panel here, we've got all of these, and so when we create our duplicate, it's still going to be in here. So when we say controller world space equals true, what that does is it liberates it to the world. Okay, so if it has a parent name, then what we're going to do is identify a new parent for our controller, and that's what our control space is going to be. We're going to create a space locator, and we're going to call it whatever our controller name is, and we're going to call it to the parent. Then we're going to parent our controller to our locator or to our parent. Now, if we don't happen to have a parent controller, then we're not going to really too worry about the orientation, so we're just going to leave it in world space, and so we're just going to leave it right at that. Then once we have our parent created for our controller, then we're going to do a point constraint and an orient constraint to the joint name that we wanted to attach to. And then we delete that constraint, and then we remove any kind of information. Okay, the delete on the delete on the controllers gets rid of the point constraint and the orient constraint. Then we are going to make the identity for the controller. That's basically essentially to freezing the controller itself. Then we're going to have to ask it a little bit at a time. And so, yeah, here it is. I admit I'm a little bit sloppy. I'm not too happy about this code, but it just works. It says I didn't have the time to do it really efficiently. But if you have the parent name, and then if there is a parent controller, then we're just going to assign parent controller to whatever that parent controller is. Then we're going to test to see is the name is an instance of the list. Okay, so is the list, where is the list? Okay. All right, we're going to test to see, all right, is the P name of list type? And if it is a P name, is it in there? Then we're going to put the controller inside of, we're going to create a new name. We're going to put control in front of the format. And if not, then we're going to just give it the plain old name. So yeah, I know that this is a little bit of slop. So we're going to basically parent the controller to its parent yet once again, just to make sure that there is no monkey business going on. All right, then once we have the parent controller, then we're going to parent constraint the joint name to the controller, maintain offset equals true, and then we're going to return the controller. Okay, so this is just a recreation of our make align controller that we saw for the FK class, but we're going to make sure that it works with the current setup that we have here for so that we can make it one joint at a time. All right, so there we go. There we have it. And so this creates the quick controller, and so identified here. So now what we have to do is we've got the FK control. Now what we have to do is create the IK control. Okay, just so that we know this is working, I'm going to comment out the FK portion, and then I'm going to uncomment the IK portion. And so what do we do first? We create a duplicate chain of this, but instead of calling it FK, we're going to call this IK. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of all this, get rid of the Zangief. All right, now we're going to execute it. And so technically, the only thing that should be created is the IK chain. Going to go ahead and select all of this, hit enter. All right, now it looks like everything is okay. Nothing weird has happened. So I will go over here. We have the clavicle L, the upper arm L, the lower arm L, and the hand L. But now look at this. Instead of the FK clavicle, upper arm, lower arm, and hand, we now have the IK clavicle, upper arm, lower arm, and the IK hand. Those all duplicating chains. And really, the only difference between this and the prior call for the FK chain is that we're using IK instead of FK. All right. Now, we finished that. We are ready to create the IK controls. Now we have the IK controls, so this is ultimately the exact same command that we used last time that we established last week. Let's test to see if this all works. Let me zoom out here, get that going again. All right. And now we're going to move that. Okay, check it out, gang. Here is our pole vector, and we now have our IK system hooked up. I'm going to test this, move this around, and then we're moving our IK hand around, and we're going to test make sure that the pole vector is ultimately working. Does the rotator work on here? Yes, it does. Okay, now you're probably going, why didn't the hand follow? We see the upper arm, the lower arm on here, but we don't see the hand moving. And that's because the hand will always be parented to the binding skeleton. Now, if you create IK and FK switching on each of the fingers, that's all fine. It's really a recursive process. But ultimately, you start off, everything gets bound to the binding skeleton. Now let's take a look at make the IK chain here. So here we go. They make IK controllers. Okay. Make IK hand control. We've seen that. Make IK. Make the IK controller. Okay, so we cleaned this up a little bit from last week. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to make the clavicle controller, and that should be the exact same function that we used last week when we made the clavicle. Then we're going to make the IK handle, and so we're going to call the handle make IK. And then here's our first element. This is the upper arm. This is the last element, the end effector. This is chain 3. And here's the IK name. And then we want this to come through as the IK name. And then once we've created that, then what we're going to do is we're going to create the handle, make the IK handle, and we're identifying that as as handle 0. Then here's the difference than what it was before. We're going to put the handle name or the handle object inside of the accessories section inside of our character. And we didn't do this before. So we put the parent inside of the accessories. So we've given it a nice place to be. So it's not hanging off in la la land. Then what we're going to do is we're going to create the hand controller. This is the exact same control function that we were working with last week. And then we're going to use the make pole vector, which is the exact same function we were doing that before. And then so a little bit different from last week is we are going to return a tuple containing nothing but the clavicle controller, the handle name, the hand controller, and then the pole vector. So what we're doing is returning each of the controllers, one for the clavicle. The IK hand is the hand controller, which is already hooked up, and the pole vector. And then we're going to send the handle name, which we're going to be used for a reference. All right, so let's go and test to make sure that this all worked again. I keep testing it because I keep breaking stuff. So let's just test to make sure that all of our stuff is moved as appropriately. Okay, here we have is the IK clavicle, and this should move as expected. All right, that looks good. Then we have the upper arm. Now there's no control for that, no control for the lower arm, and there's the hand. We have no controller for that. However, what we do have now, if we go over to the accessories, we do have over here the IK hand offset. We do have this controller here, and this now put over as a child of the control root. And in the accessories, we're putting the pole vector constraint. Okay, we're putting the pole vector constraint as a child of the character root itself, but as the accessories here, we're going to put the arm FKIK as part of the accessories that we are on here. Now, you're going to see that in the accessories, we really don't have much stuff going on here. The accessories is kind of a place that we're going to put information that we weren't really quite sure what to do with. We're going to put it and make sure that it has a place that if we had to, we can come back to it at some place in the future. Okay, so we have our IK system and it's hooked up and it's looking good. All right, so let's test our function, to make sure that it's working for the IK and the FK chain. So really all I'm going to do is uncomment the FK chain duplicate part and uncomment the make quick FK controllers. All right, I've got those unchained. So I'm going to go ahead and select everything. Okay, looks like we've got a mess on our hands, but let's just check check our skeleton to make sure that we've got everything. All right. So we have our clavicle left, the upper arm left, the lower arm left, the hand. We have the FK clavicle, the FK upper arm, the FK lower arm, the FK hand, and we have the IK clavicle, the IK upper arm, the IK lower arm, and the IK hand. So let's test to see if each of these work. So I'm going to grab just the clavicle control and move that up. And then I'm going to grab my hand control, move it up over here. I'm going to move my pole vector, move it up to over here. So hopefully it's not doubling up on itself. Yeah, that works. And then I'm going to rotate the hand so that it looks like it's doing something reasonable. So hey, everybody. All right, let's now test to see if the FK is still working. I've got the FK here. I'm going to rotate the shoulder down, move it forward. I'm going to grab the upper arm, rotate the upper arm. I'm going to give a little bit of a bend right in the elbow. And then I'm going to be giving the hand a little bit of a scooch, but we don't see anything. Why? Well, that's because nothing's attached to it yet. So here's the binding skeleton right in the middle, and it's just hanging out there in La La Land. It's got no activity on it at all. But we do now have an FK chain or an IK chain here and an FK chain, and they are all waiting to be combined together. And that is where we will leave things off on today's lecture. And so just as a preview, it's not going to take a whole lot. If you really want to do it, we've just got 2 lines to basically connect the binding skeleton to the IK chain and the FK chain so that it's always receiving information from both chains at the same time. And then once we get through with that, then we're going to create the switch control, which is, well, it's long and there's a lot to do, but it's actually more or less just busy work. And then I'm going to show you how to do the IK FK snapping, or the FK the IK snapping and the IK the FK snapping. Okay, very cool. Thank you very much for your patience, folks. Thank you very much for allowing you to supplement this lecture. And I will see and talk to you all again very, very soon.